What if the entire image of motherhood that Meghan Markle built, every polished photo, every whispered bedtime story, every moment of tender maternal pride, was never real? Not just exaggerated, not just embellished for the cameras. What if it was fabricated? Hold on, take a breath, because what you're about to hear will shake even the most jaded royal watchers. The story begins not with Meghan, not with Harry, not even with baby Archie. It starts with a voice that refuses to be silenced. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. A woman the palace can't control. Lady Colin Campbell. Yes, that Lady C, aristocrat, author, television provocateur, and longtime thorn in the side of royal spin doctors. For years, she's dropped tantalizing clues, sprinkled hints like breadcrumbs leading into a dark forest of secrets. But this time, she didn't just hint. She detonated. On a live broadcast, with cameras rolling and jaws dropping, Lady C casually, almost gleefully, stated that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. And then, she doubled down. She claimed she had documents. An adoption record. Not a theory. Not a conspiracy. A record. Let that sink in. In a royal world built on image, bloodlines, and centuries of protocol, the implications are catastrophic. If Archie wasn't born of Meghan, then who is he really? Why keep it secret? And how deep does the cover-up go? You might be thinking, that can't possibly be true. Surely someone would have noticed. But what if they did? What if people noticed and were silenced? Because as this video will show you, the signs were always there. Inconsistencies in the birth certificate, a mysteriously missing nanny, a strange shift in Meghan's body shape during her so-called pregnancy, and an avalanche of NDAs stronger than Fort Knox. Still think this is just tabloid noise? Then ask yourself, why did Buckingham Palace refuse to publish Archie's full birth details? Why did Meghan and Harry skip the traditional hospital photo call? Why has Lady C now chosen this moment, this exact moment, to go public with her most shocking claim yet? Because something changed, something behind the scenes, something big enough to make even Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Damage Control, burst into tears when she found out the leak had happened. But before we go further, let's get real for a second. This isn't just celebrity gossip. It's not a juicy headline designed to boost clicks or pad out a YouTube script. No, this is about trust. It's about truth. It's about the people who were told one thing and led to believe another. About how powerful institutions, be it royal or media, can construct entire realities. And how sometimes just one person, armed with enough audacity and just the right receipts, can bring it all crashing down. Because once you start pulling the thread on Archie's origin story, the whole tapestry of the Sussex narrative begins to unravel. So here's what we'll do. Over the next 13 chapters, we're going to walk you through the hidden world behind the perfectly curated Instagram posts, the breathy Netflix narrations, and the Oprah confessions. We'll track flight logs, unearth deleted footage, analyze strange wording in royal documents, and hear from voices who were too afraid to speak until now. We'll meet a nanny who vanished, a whistleblower who claims to have seen the real adoption file, a woman in Los Angeles who believes she's Archie's biological mother, and whose story has never been told until now. And at the heart of it all, a duchess in free fall. Because what Meghan Markle feared most wasn't public hatred. It wasn't losing followers, or press deals, or even royal titles. It was losing control of her image. The image of a mother. Of all the roles she's played. Actress, royal, victim, feminist warrior, being Archie's mom was her most beloved title. Her most sacred story. So when that story started to crack, she cracked too. Tears. Screaming. Alleged breakdowns behind closed doors. Heated phone calls between Montecito and London. Meghan begging Harry to do something. Anything. To stop this from spreading. But it was too late. Because Lady C didn't just leak a rumor. She lit a fuse. And now, it's time to follow the sparks. Why does Archie's birth certificate look so different from other royal children's? Why was the media banned from photographing Meghan for long stretches during her pregnancy? Why did a private jet take a highly unusual flight path just weeks before Archie's alleged birth? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, if Meghan Markle didn't give birth to Archie, who did? I know, it sounds impossible. But remember, We live in a world where image can be manufactured, where billion-dollar PR firms can sculpt narratives like Play-Doh, where NDAs can buy silence, where truth gets buried beneath 1,000 Instagram filters. Still, sometimes the truth doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it screams. And if you listen closely to the cracks in the Sussex's story, you'll hear it. A subtle shifting of facts. A quiet panic growing louder. A breaking point inching closer. Because when you build a castle on a lie, it only takes one storm to bring it down. And Lady C? She brought a hurricane. So, are you ready? Because what comes next isn't for the faint of heart. It's a descent into shadows, a roller coaster of revelations, contradictions, and emotional wreckage. And at the end of it, one thing will become painfully clear. Not everything is as it seems in the House of Sussex, especially not Archie's birth. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the first red flag wasn't hidden in some secret file or whispered in a backroom meeting, but right there, in plain sight, on a birth certificate? Because that's exactly where the first crack in Meghan and Harry's story begins. Not in some anonymous tip-off, not in Lady C's scandalous leak, but on a document that should have been straightforward, simple, and honest. Yet from the moment Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor's birth was officially recorded, something fell off. The date? Strange. The hospital? Omitted. The attending doctor? Nowhere to be found. And the mother's name? Edited after the fact. Wait, what? Yes, edited. As in legally changed. Quietly. Subtly. And with absolutely no explanation from the palace. Let's rewind. Archie was reportedly born on May 6, 2019. His parents, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, had insisted on privacy. Fair enough. But unlike the births of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, each followed by proud parents standing on hospital steps with their newborn, Archie's arrival was shrouded in mystery. No photo call, no media, no moment for the world. And when the birth certificate finally surfaced, several days later, eagle-eyed royal watchers noticed something strange. Meghan's name, which originally appeared as Rachel Meghan Markle, was later altered to simply Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Why remove her actual name? No other royal mother did that. Kate Middleton was listed as Catherine Elizabeth Middleton on all three of her children's certificates, even though she held the title of Duchess of Cambridge. So what was Meghan hiding? Even more puzzling, the edit was made after the certificate was publicly released. Why change a legal document retroactively? What did they not want people to see? The palace's official response was, well, non-existent. Harry and Meghan later issued a rare joint statement, claiming it was a request from the institution, not their choice. But that only raised more eyebrows. Because if the palace really made that change, why? What purpose would it serve? Or, was that statement a deflection? Was someone trying to scrub something? Let's dig deeper. Every child born into the British royal family has a meticulously documented birth. Its protocol, its tradition, and most importantly, its verification. Bloodlines matter in the monarchy. There are entire laws governing succession, titles, inheritance, and the legitimacy of a royal child isn't just a matter of pride, it's a constitutional necessity. So when a birth record is altered, it raises alarm bells. And in Archie's case, there were more than a few. Take the location of birth. Initially, rumors swirled that Meghan gave birth at home in Frogmore Cottage. Then others claimed it was Portland Hospital in London. Eventually, the certificate listed Portland, but only after people began asking questions. Yet no photographs surfaced of the Duchess entering or leaving the hospital. No official doctor gave a press briefing. No midwife interviews. Nothing. Compare that to Kate's births, where medical professionals were named, hospitals were confirmed, and details were released in near real time. But with Meghan, radio silence. Even the royal press corps, who are granted limited but traditional access, were reportedly shut out. It's as if the palace wanted the birth to feel real, but didn't want anyone to see it happen. Why? Now let's address what might seem like a small thing, but isn't. In the British system, the mother must personally verify and sign the birth certificate or authorize someone to do it on her behalf. In Meghan's case, her name was listed, but then changed. Some claim it was a harmless switch to reflect her royal title. But if that's the case, why didn't Kate's certificates follow suit? Why only Meghan's? Unless Her full legal name appearing on that certificate posed a problem. A contradiction. An exposure. A legal complication that couldn't be allowed to stand. Still think that's a stretch? Let's now talk timing. Archie's certificate was filed several days after his supposed birth. That's not unusual in the UK. Parents have up to 42 days to register. But the way it was done, combined with the sudden re-edit, reeked of damage control. As if someone submitted the first version too hastily and then realized a critical mistake. What mistake, you ask? Well, that depends on what you believe Archie's true origins are. If Lady C's leaked adoption record is real, and we'll get to that later, it would mean that listing Meghan as the biological mother on the original document might be legally problematic. In fact, in many jurisdictions, falsifying parentage on a birth certificate can constitute fraud. Of course, this is the UK, and this is royalty. Different rules apply. Or do they? Because here's the thing. Even the monarchy is bound by certain legal procedures. And if Meghan and Harry were, in fact, involved in a private adoption that they concealed as a biological birth, then every legal document supporting that illusion would have to be meticulously crafted and controlled. Any mistake, even one line of incorrect information, could unravel the whole story. So that birth certificate edit? It wasn't cosmetic. It was strategic, or maybe even desperate. But here's where it gets darker. Shortly after the change was discovered, several reporters who had written pieces questioning the timing or details of the certificate began receiving legal threats. Defamation suits, takedown requests, cease and desist letters. Why the overreaction? Why not just clarify the situation? Why weaponize lawyers against journalists asking reasonable questions? Unless, again, the questions were getting too close to the truth. And the truth was something that had to be buried. Here's what one palace insider allegedly told a tabloid, under condition of anonymity. There was panic over the certificate. It wasn't just about titles or names. It was about what else could be inferred from it. There were phone calls, meetings. Everyone was told, do not let this blow up. It was treated like a national security issue. A birth certificate treated like national security? That's not royal tradition. That's damage control. And it gets even weirder. During a BBC segment that aired shortly after Archie's birth, a reporter briefly mentioned unusual gaps in the official paperwork. The line was cut from the online replay. Gone. Scrubbed. As if someone didn't want viewers noticing anything odd. But here's the twist. The public did notice. Social media forums erupted. Royal watchers began digging. Reddit threads popped up with meticulous comparisons between Archie's certificate and those of his cousins. And suddenly, a narrative emerged. One that no royal PR firm could control. A narrative that asked, was Archie really born on May 6th? Was he really born at Portland Hospital? Was Meghan Markle even present? Or was the certificate a crafted story, meant to conceal a very different truth? Because if there was an adoption, and if the timing didn't align with the narrative the Sussexes had already fed to the world, they would have had to backdate events, reconstruct timelines, create the illusion of pregnancy. And the certificate? That's the first domino. If it falls, everything else follows. Which leads us to the million-dollar question. Who submitted the edited certificate? Whose hand made the change? The palace has never officially said. Neither has Meghan. And that silence? It speaks volumes. Because in the world of royalty, silence isn't denial. It's strategy. But now, with Lady Colin Campbell pulling the curtain back, and with whispers of sealed adoption records beginning to circulate, those edits on the certificate no longer look like harmless bureaucracy. They look like a confession, a silent admission that something wasn't right from the beginning. And what's more chilling, the person who discovered the edit didn't just stumble upon it. She was tipped off. By who? And why? Because that anonymous tip wasn't just the start of a controversy. It was the beginning of a leak. And the leak was about to explode. What kind of person has the nerve to blow the lid off one of the most carefully managed royal secrets of the decade? Lady Colin Campbell, that's who. Because while most people tiptoe around the monarchy, careful not to offend, cautious not to speculate, Lady C kicks the door in, wearing pearls and a smirk, and starts naming names. She doesn't just drop bombshells. She drops them while sipping tea. And this time, she wasn't holding back. In a now viral live stream, during a casual Q&A that her critics dismissed as eccentric rambling, Lady C let something slip. Or maybe she meant to. With her, it's hard to tell. But what she said sent shockwaves through the royal watching world. Meghan Markle, she said, is not the biological mother of Archie. Just like that. No hesitation. No build-up. No qualification. Just fact. Delivered in her clipped, aristocratic tone as if she were commenting on the weather. And then she moved on. Casually. As if she hadn't just detonated a grenade in the middle of Buckingham Palace. The chat box exploded. Twitter lit up. Clips were ripped and posted to TikTok. Millions watched in stunned disbelief. Was this the moment everything changed? Because Lady C wasn't just anybody. She wasn't a troll or a YouTube conspiracy theorist. She was a royal insider, an author, a socialite, a peer of the realm. She wrote one of the most controversial biographies of Princess Diana. She dines with dukes. She has sources that most reporters can only dream about. And yet, many dismissed her. They laughed. Lady C's being outrageous again, they said. She just wants attention. But here's the thing. She was right before. She predicted Meghan and Harry's move to America months before it happened. She flagged issues with Archie's birth long before anyone else did. And now? Now she was claiming she had proof. Not speculation. Not gossip. Documents. A file. An adoption record. She didn't show it. Not yet. But she teased it. Just enough to ignite curiosity and fury in equal measure. In a follow-up interview, when pressed about her claim, she doubled down. Let's just say that when people go to extraordinary lengths to control a narrative, it's usually because that narrative isn't true. And then, she smiled. Was it real? Was she bluffing? Here's the twist, Meghan's team responded. Fast. Within 48 hours, a lawyer issued a public statement calling the remarks vicious lies and libelous nonsense. They threatened legal action. They called it defamation. But they didn't deny the adoption. Not in so many words. They danced around it. Focused on the personal attack. Accused Lady C of racism. Of jealousy. Of irrelevance. But they never said, Meghan Markle is Archie's biological mother. And we can prove it. Why not? Why not end the speculation with one sentence? Why let it fester? Unless they couldn't. Unless the truth was more dangerous than the rumor. And that's when things got even stranger. Suddenly, Lady C's old interviews began resurfacing. People started re-watching her earlier statements. And a pattern began to emerge. She'd always hinted that something was off with Meghan's pregnancy. That the timeline didn't add up. That the secrecy wasn't just about privacy. It was about hiding something. And now? She was going public. Why now? That's the real question. Why did Lady C choose this moment, years after Archie's birth, to make her boldest claim yet? Well, here's what sources suggest. In the weeks leading up to the live stream, Lady C had reportedly been approached by a disillusioned former staffer who worked with a London-based legal firm tied to royal document handling. This person, still anonymous, allegedly provided her with a copy of a sealed court record. A file containing details about an international adoption, finalized in California, referencing two high-profile individuals residing in Montecito, California, formerly of royal status. The baby in question? Male. Born in early May 2019. According to this whistleblower, the file contained two things that made Lady C sit up in her chair. A birth name that didn't match Archie's. A mother's name that certainly wasn't Meghan Markle. If this is true, and we're treading carefully here, it would be one of the most explosive cover-ups in modern royal history. A royal child, adopted in secret, passed off as biological, sold to the world as part of a fairy tale. And it didn't stop there. After her claim went public, Lady C began receiving messages. Some supportive, others not so much. One source close to her reported that she received a threatening email warning her to stop digging or face the same fate as Diana. Another email, sent anonymously, simply read, "You're getting too close." But Lady C, being Lady C, wasn't cowed. In her next video, she stared directly into the camera and said, "I've dealt with threats before. This is not my first dance with powerful people trying to protect their dirty secrets. But I suggest they remember, I don't bluff. And I never back down." She even teased the possibility of publishing excerpts from the file. But so far, she hasn't. Why? Possibly legal reasons. Possibly strategy. Possibly fear. Because if what she has is genuine, it could trigger a constitutional crisis. Remember, Archie is technically seventh in line to the British throne. If his parentage is in question, that line gets murky. It raises questions not just about Meghan, but about Harry, about what he knew, about whether he participated in the deception. It throws their entire narrative, victims of the palace, exiled truth-tellers, into chaos. So what does the palace say? Absolutely nothing. Buckingham Palace, as expected, maintains its royal silence. "We do not comment on personal matters," is the official line. But behind the scenes, sources say the damage control machine has kicked into overdrive. There have been emergency meetings, phone calls between Clarence House and Kensington Palace, worried discussions about whether this story might spiral into mainstream media. So far, it hasn't. The tabloids hint, the bloggers whisper, but no major outlet has touched it. Why? Fear, legal intimidation, royal pressure, and a lingering sense that if this story is true, covering it could risk reputations, careers, even national stability. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about Meghan Markle. It's about the monarchy. It's about succession. It's about the integrity of an institution that claims to be based on bloodline, duty, and truth. And if Lady C is right, if she really has the adoption record, then that institution just got caught in its biggest lie yet. But what's most compelling about this chapter isn't just the claim. It's the reaction. Meghan allegedly broke down when she saw the video. Tears, rage, panic. She called her PR team in the middle of the night, demanded to know what could be done, asked if the platform could be taken down, if Lady C could be silenced. But Lady C can't be silenced. She's been called worse. She's survived scandal. She's thrived on controversy. And this time, she has the public's attention. Now all eyes are on her. Waiting. Because if she publishes that document, if she reveals the full file, then everything changes. The press will be forced to report it. The palace will be forced to respond. And Meghan? She'll be forced to face a truth she's tried to bury since 2019. But Lady C didn't act alone. Someone gave her that file. Someone close. And the question now is, who? What if the most watched pregnancy in the world was nothing more than a performance? No real baby bump. No biological changes. Just a very convincing costume. And an even more convincing script. Sound too wild to be true? Then ask yourself, why did so many people, from the moment Meghan Markle first appeared pregnant, say that something just didn't look right? Because this wasn't just online gossip. These were visual anomalies, captured on camera, replayed, slowed down, dissected frame by audiences who'd seen plenty of royal pregnancies before. And Meghan's? It felt off. Let's go back to the beginning. October 15th, 2018. Kensington Palace announces that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are expecting their first child in spring 2019. The news comes just hours after the couple land in Sydney for their first major royal tour. The press goes wild. Headlines blaze. Meghan beams. And yet, there's no bump. Zero. Nothing. Photos from that exact day show a perfectly flat stomach. Not barely visible. Not subtle. Just flat. Of course, every woman shows differently, right? True. But 2 days later, during a walkabout, Meghan appears with a noticeably rounded belly. Not enormous, but suddenly there. Reporters comment on it. Fashion blogs note that the bump seems to grow and shift depending on the outfit. And thus, the theory is born. That Meghan Markle is not pregnant at all. That she is wearing a prosthetic bump. A moon bump. Now pause. Because this is the moment most mainstream viewers tune out. A fake bump? Too crazy. Too conspiratorial. And yet, photos don't lie. Let's talk about the fold moment. One of the most viral clips of Meghan's pregnancy came from her visit to the Brinsworth housecare home in December 2018. As she bends down to adjust her coat, her bump folds. Not creases. Folds. You can see it. A literal accordion-like collapse at the abdomen. The footage spread like wildfire. People watched it on loop. Some tried to explain it away. It's just the fabric. The dress is stiff. It's the camera angle. But others weren't convinced. Because human stomachs don't bend like that. Not at 7 months pregnant. Not ever. Then came the bounce clip. At a charity event in early 2019, Meghan is seen walking quickly. As she moves, her belly appears to bounce. Up and down. Visibly. Observers were baffled. A real third trimester baby bump, connected by ligaments, fluid, and weight, doesn't do that. It's stable. centered, heavy. But Meghan's moved like a beanbag in a tote. Again, video evidence, not speculation. So what was going on? Some say the answer is simple. Meghan, a former actress, staged the entire pregnancy to secure royal standing, to elevate her brand, to fast-track motherhood optics, and most critically, to cover up an adoption. Now that theory, that's explosive, but it's not without precedent. Hollywood has a long history of staged appearances, surrogacy used for privacy, publicists crafting timelines, celebrities faking relationships, even divorces. So why wouldn't a duchess, steeped in a world of image management and PR warfare, do the same? Let's now turn to wardrobe. A pregnant woman's fashion evolves with her changing body. Waistlines shift, breasts swell. The fit of clothing changes week by week. But Meghan's wardrobe told a different story. One day, she's wearing a tight, curve-hugging dress that accentuates a firm, high bump. The next day, the bump has dropped or is visibly smaller. The next, it's huge again. It's like the bump had its own mood swings. Fashion experts began compiling side-by-side comparisons. Same month, different bump sizes. Some even used motion graphics to trace the belly's movement over time. And the results? Inconsistent, unnatural, erratic. At one point, during a visit to a mosque in Morocco, Meghan's bump appears to shift sideways as she turns, a detail noticed not just by fans, but by professional tailors. One even wrote, "That isn't the movement of a baby. That's the movement of padding slipping under a dress." Still not convinced? Then consider this. Meghan reportedly changed bumps depending on the outfit. A leaked email, allegedly from a stylist assisting her in 2019, referenced fitting the size 6 silhouette bump for the green Roland Mouret gown and switching to the 8-month model for a coat fitting. Why would a real pregnant woman need multiple bump options? Now, Meghan's defenders argued she was simply protecting her privacy, that she wanted to shield her unborn child from the public eye. But that argument begins to collapse when you remember how aggressively she leaned into the mom image, cradling her bump constantly, posing with hands wrapped around her stomach even in posed, still portraits, speaking publicly about motherhood before the 3rd trimester even began. It was themed branding, and nothing about it felt organic. Let's also address the elephant in the room, Meghan's size. She remained slim, toned, narrow-faced, no swollen ankles, no puffy cheeks, no waddling. Yes, women carry differently, but almost all pregnant women, especially in the later stages, show some signs. But Meghan looked runway ready. At 8 months, no discoloration, no lower back arch, no fatigue in her gait. She was practically floating. And perhaps strangest of all, she traveled constantly. Royal advisors were reportedly concerned about Meghan's travel schedule during her pregnancy. In the 3rd trimester, she flew to Morocco. She attended high-profile engagements. She flew to New York for her baby shower, while 8 months pregnant. And not just flew private. Long haul, with no medical team. Doctors recommend minimizing air travel after 28 to 32 weeks, especially on transatlantic flights. But Meghan? She was boarding jets like she was in her 2nd trimester, with no complaint, no doctor seen, no precautions taken. And then came the birth announcement. May 6, 2019. But no photos, no hospital door moment, no excited family members beaming. Just a short press release, followed days later by a highly staged photo op, indoors, controlled, tight frame. Baby Archie, wrapped in a blanket, sleeping, unmoving, no exposed skin, no feeding, no crying. It could have been any newborn. The whole rollout felt rehearsed, choreographed, calculated. Even the Queen, who had met all her other great-grandchildren with warmth and spontaneity, looked restrained. In fact, some insiders whispered that Her Majesty's visit with Archie was brief. A check-the-box encounter, not a gushing great-grandmother moment. Why? Could it be that even the Queen suspected something? Could it be that behind the walls of Windsor, there were quiet questions and louder silences? Then came the christening, another tightly controlled affair. Only 2 photographs released. No footage, no media allowed. Compare that to the christenings of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis. Those were public, joyous, open. But Archie's? Secretive, shielded. Even the identities of his godparents were withheld. Why? Again, we return to the same haunting question. What were they hiding? And now, years later, with Lady C's leaked file looming and whispers of adoption swirling, it all starts to make sense. The inconsistent bump, the wardrobe glitches, the folding belly, the silence from doctors, the rushed birth record, the palace's tight grip on imagery. It wasn't just privacy. It was control. Control over a narrative that could collapse if just one image, one witness, one document slipped through. But there's more. Because someone did witness something. A former palace staffer who has since relocated to Canada told a podcast host anonymously. There were whispers. People knew. Not everyone believed she was really pregnant. But no one wanted to challenge it. Because if you did, you were out. They called it the wall of Meghan. If you questioned the pregnancy, you hit the wall. You were frozen out. And those who didn't toe the line, silenced, transferred, or paid. Which begs the question, if there was nothing to hide, why hide so much? Because real pregnancies don't need NDAs. Real birth certificates don't need edits. Real mothers don't need prop bellies. And as we peel back the layers of this illusion, one thing becomes heartbreakingly clear. The greatest performance Meghan ever gave wasn't on Suits. It was as a mother-to-be. But just when you think the deception ends with the bump, comes a twist that changes everything. A private jet, a nighttime flight, and an unknown infant. What if the person who held Archie in her arms, who fed him, rocked him to sleep, and changed his diapers, was also holding a secret that could bring down the entire Sussex fairy tale? And what if that person disappeared? No scandal like this unfolds without someone on the inside. And in Meghan and Harry's case, that someone was the nanny, or more precisely, the first nanny. Because here's what the palace never fully explained. Archie's initial caregiver was hired, trained, introduced, and then gone, vanished. No farewell, no tribute, no thank you for your service. Just silence, erased from the narrative. And that silence? It's deafening. But let's rewind. When a royal baby is born, it is standard practice for an experienced nanny, usually from the prestigious Norland College or equivalent, to be brought in shortly after birth. Discretion, discipline, decorum. These nannies are background checked to the core. Their contracts are long-term. Their faces, though mostly kept out of the press, become known to palace staff. But Archie's first nanny? No one even remembers her name. In fact, there were two early nannies, if you believe insider accounts. The first lasted only a few days. The second? A few weeks. Let that sink in. In a royal household, where stability is prized, especially around an infant, two nannies rotated through in under a month. Why? According to royal correspondence at the time, the couple dismissed the first nanny abruptly. No official explanation was given, just vague references to not working out. But behind the scenes, something darker was brewing. Rumors began to swirl, quickly silenced by legal threats, about why the first nanny was let go. According to one insider who spoke anonymously to an Australian tabloid, she saw something she wasn't supposed to. And she talked. What did she see? Not abuse, not neglect, but a baby that arrived under unusual circumstances. Let's piece it together. The nanny, hired under the assumption that she'd be caring for a royal newborn, was reportedly shocked when she arrived and found that Archie was not only older than expected, but had no documented birth schedule, no discharge papers, no standard pediatric file from Portland Hospital, no vaccination records. She asked questions Meghan allegedly didn't like. The final straw? A comment she allegedly made to another staff member. This baby's too alert for a newborn. Hours later, she was dismissed. Not just let go, erased. Staff were told not to speak of her again. No one was allowed to mention her name to press. She'd signed an airtight NDA, reinforced by a legal clause so strict it bordered on paranoia. And yet, traces of her presence remain. A single blurred photo, captured by paparazzi, shows a woman entering Frogmore Cottage around the time of Archie's reported birth, holding a swaddled infant in a manner that looked, well, experienced. She doesn't appear again. Who was she? What did she know? Some believe this nanny was the only staffer to witness the transition, that she saw the handoff between the adoption intermediary and the Sussex household. One staffer claims she saw the nanny crying in the kitchen, shaken, whispering on the phone. Another overheard Meghan allegedly saying, "She can't be trusted." She's asking too many questions. And then, gone. But that's just the beginning. Because the second nanny wasn't much more fortunate. This woman, older, more reserved, a former Norland-trained professional, was brought in to stabilize the situation after the first one left. Her experience? Impeccable. Her role? Crisis containment. But even she didn't last. In private texts, leaked months later to a gossip blog, she allegedly wrote, "I don't know what's going on in that house. The child, it's not what I expected. The child. Not baby Archie. Not the prince. Just the child. Cold. Distanced. Coded." And she, too, left. Shortly after, Harry and Meghan announced they would no longer employ a full-time nanny. Publicly, they framed it as a hands-on parenting decision. But behind closed doors, insiders whispered the truth. They couldn't keep one. Because no one could be trusted. Because someone might talk. And maybe someone did. Because not long after the second nanny left, rumors of adoption began surfacing again. Not in major papers, but in blogs, message boards, whisper networks. A post on a royal forum read, "Nanny turnover equals red flag. If you're hiding a baby's origin, you need complete loyalty. NDAs can only go so far." But here's where the trail gets chilling. 2 years later, a podcast host investigating royal PR blackouts contacted a woman who had briefly worked in Windsor's outer staff network in 2019. She didn't name names, but she said something cryptic. There was one staffer who saw too much. She left with a payout and a gag order. But she didn't leave happy. The host pressed, "Was it a nanny?" The source hesitated. "Let's just say, she was close to the baby. Closer than the mother." Closer than the mother? A line that shook listeners to their core. Was this a reference to the nanny bonding with the child more than Meghan? Or something more disturbing? That the mother was barely present? That the pregnancy was a smokescreen? Let's circle back to that. If Meghan had indeed adopted Archie secretly and staged a pregnancy to preserve public image, then the nannies were the closest risk of exposure. They held the child, fed the child, noticed timelines, observed inconsistencies. And Meghan knew it. Which may explain why no official nanny was ever granted long-term visibility. No public photos. No warm interviews with our beloved nanny. No royal Christmas cards including her. She was a ghost. Removed from the story. Scrubbed from the record. Even Finding Freedom, the supposedly intimate biography of the Sussexes, barely mentions any nanny figure. Why? Because the fewer people who knew the truth, the easier it was to control the lie. But there's more. One journalist who once covered the palace beat posted a cryptic tweet in 2021. "If the first nanny ever speaks, it's over." That tweet was deleted within hours. But the damage was done. Redditors dug. Bloggers speculated. One even claimed to have found the nanny's first name through a leaked employee list, but was quickly hit with a takedown notice. Which raises a question. If she's just an ordinary staffer, why such aggressive suppression? Because maybe, just maybe, she's not ordinary. Maybe she's the only person outside the royal couple who knows how Archie entered that house. And maybe she kept something. A diary. A letter. A voice note. Insurance. Because NDAs are only paper. But secrets? They weigh heavy. Especially when they involve a baby. Especially when you were the one holding him. And in this case, that nanny, who knew too much, wasn't just a silent witness. She was the first crack in the dam. But it wasn't the last. Because as Meghan and Harry tightened their inner circle, one detail slipped through. A flight manifest. A name no one recognized. And a newborn arriving by jet. What if Archie didn't arrive through a hospital wing, but through a hangar? What if the beginning of Meghan and Harry's journey into parenthood didn't involve labor pains and delivery rooms, but flight manifests and immigration paperwork? Because somewhere, hidden beneath press releases and polished photos, there exists a document that could unravel it all. A flight log. One entry. One baby. No mother. And if you believe the whispers, that baby didn't arrive in a delivery ward. He arrived by jet. Let's backtrack to a quiet window in early April 2019, just weeks before Archie's alleged May 6th birth date. The public narrative was clear. Meghan Markle was in the final stage of pregnancy. Nesting. Preparing. Laying low. The palace even released a statement claiming the couple had decided to keep the details of the birth private, fueling expectations of a home birth at Frogmore Cottage. But behind the scenes, something very different was taking shape. According to aviation records from a private jet charter service frequently used by celebrities and ultra-high-net-worth clients, a Gulfstream G550 jet landed at Farnborough Airport just outside London in the early hours of April 30th, 2019. It arrived from California. Aboard, for passengers, 3 adults, 1 infant, all registered under pseudonyms. Nothing odd there. Celebs use aliases all the time. But here's where things get weird. The passenger manifest listed no pregnant woman, no signs of medical staff, and no official royal security escort. Yet multiple sources at the airport noted an unusually high security protocol for the arrival. The infant, according to one ground crew member who spoke anonymously to an independent blog, was quiet, bundled, and carried off by a woman in her 40s with an American accent. Not Meghan, not a nurse, not a midwife, someone else. And that someone, according to internal customs tagging, had been cleared for temporary custodial transport of a minor. Let that sink in. Custodial transport. Legal language often used in adoption or surrogate arrangements involving interstate, or in this case, international, movement of a child. And just a few days later, boom, Meghan Markle reemerges, smiling, glowing, still very much pregnant, in a crisp white maternity coat during a surprise public appearance. The footage is brief, heavily edited, but eagle-eyed viewers notice something strange. Her baby bump had moved again, upward, sharper, firmer, not the look of a woman days from delivery, and certainly not one who'd just endured a transatlantic pregnancy. So what was really happening? Here's the theory that's gained massive traction in whistleblower forums and insider royal commentary circles. Meghan and Harry finalized an international adoption in late April 2019. The baby, believed to be Archie, was born in California under sealed records. The adoption, private, fast-tracked, and facilitated by high-powered lawyers, was arranged under the radar. Once custody was approved, the child was flown to the UK via private jet, accompanied by an intermediary. And Meghan? She continued playing the role of expectant mother until the stage was ready, until she could debut her baby without scrutiny. Now, this may sound fantastical, but let's look at what followed. No hospital confirmation, no photographic proof of labor, no doctor's statement, no post-birth exit photos. And days later, just 2 days after the Farnborough jet arrival, a palace announcement. The Duchess of Sussex has gone into labor. Hours later, the Duchess of Sussex has delivered a healthy baby boy. But both announcements came after the fact. No press presence, no medical validation, just copy, issued via press office. And what's more, the couple themselves admitted, months later, that they had misled the press. They told the world Meghan had gone into labor that morning. In reality, Archie had already been born and was home. But how? If Meghan had given birth earlier, why lie? Unless the timing was being manipulated to align with a different arrival. Now, let's talk about the jet again. The aviation company involved has a strict privacy policy. But one former employee, since dismissed, claimed that a well-known West Coast adoption attorney had been the point of contact for booking. That attorney has worked with A-list clients arranging closed adoptions, international surrogacy, and high-level guardianship transitions. When asked for comment by a royal reporter, the attorney declined to speak, citing client confidentiality agreements. But the pieces were stacking, and the timing? Impeccable. Not long after the plane landed, a new staff member at Frogmore Cottage was spotted unloading infant supplies. A local doctor, previously not connected to the royal medical team, was seen entering through a back entrance, and a high-end LA-based doula was reportedly flown to the UK for a private client. It all points to one possibility. They were preparing for the child's presentation, not birth. So why all this effort? Why the secrecy, the flights, the cover story? Simple. Image. Because Meghan and Harry had built their brand on intimacy, authenticity, vulnerability. Motherhood was Meghan's soft power weapon. She'd spoken in interviews, later compiled into the Netflix docuseries, about the pain of growing up without a present father, of longing for family, of craving connection. Becoming a mother wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a narrative anchor. So staging the pregnancy, if that's what happened, wasn't just about hiding adoption. It was about controlling the emotional arc of the brand. The royal rebel becomes royal mom. The outsider becomes the nurturer. The exile becomes the everywoman. And Archie, he was the symbol, the glue, the emotional key that unlocked global sympathy. So they had to protect the illusion. Even if it meant flying a baby across an ocean in the dead of night. Even if it meant scrubbing jet records. Even if it meant silencing airport staff. But there's always one crack. And this time, it came in the form of a customs officer. A single note. A paper tag, logged digitally. Passenger number 4, infant. Age, approximate, 5 to 7 days. Traveling with guardian, temporary custodial authority. When compared to Archie's official birth date, May 6th, it raises a chilling question. Was Archie already a week old by the time the world was told he was born? And if so, where did those missing days go? Who was feeding him? Where was he sleeping? And more importantly, who gave him to Meghan? Because the name listed under the guardian's alias? It didn't match anyone in Meghan's known circle. Not Serena. Not Doria. Not Marcus. Not Amal. It was a woman with no digital footprint. No previous royal ties. No business links. But one adoption blogger claims she matches a known carrier used in elite private arrangements. A woman who, according to deep web chatter, was linked to another celebrity adoption in 2016 that also went public under suspicious timing. Coincidence? Maybe. But too many coincidences start looking like a pattern. And in this case, that pattern ends with a baby, a jet, a fake due date, and a duchess desperate to sell the fantasy. But fantasies don't last forever. And as the whispers grew louder, even the people inside the palace began to notice, especially one woman, an aide, a fixer, and according to sources, the keeper of Meghan's real secrets. She wasn't just in the room. She was in the delivery room, not of a hospital, but of a plan. What if the whole truth, the smoking gun, the irrefutable evidence, was never meant to see the light of day? What if the story Meghan and Harry spent years building, guarding, and selling to the world collapsed with just 4 pages? Because that's exactly what Lady Colin Campbell claims she now possesses, an adoption file. Not rumors, not gossip, documentation. And in those 4 pages, the unraveling of a royal fairy tale. Let's begin with what we know. Shortly after Lady C dropped her now infamous bombshell, that Meghan Markle is not the biological mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor, she hinted that she had proof. A document sent to her anonymously. A scanned file, 4 pages long, unmarked envelope, no return address. But inside, explosive. At first, she said nothing. She wasn't sure it was real. Could have been a hoax. Could have been bait. But the more she examined it, the dates, the phrasing, the official stamps, the more she realized. It fit. It filled the gaps. The strange timing. The inconsistent baby bump. The jet. The vanishing nannies. All of it. Lady C described the file in careful, clipped language. She didn't show it, but she read portions aloud during a follow-up video, slowly, dramatically, emphasizing every word. And here's what she revealed. The file was dated April 29, 2019, 1 week before Archie's official birth announcement. It originated in California. The issuing office? A private legal firm in Santa Barbara County known for managing discreet domestic adoptions. The document was titled, Petition for Finalization of Private Adoption Custody Transfer, Confidential Case File. Already, the legal language speaks volumes. This wasn't a casual guardianship, not a temporary arrangement. It was a full-blown, court-recognized, permanent transfer of custodial rights. And the adoptive parents? The names had been redacted, but not completely. One line, misaligned in the scanned PDF, revealed the initials. HRHTDS and HRHDODS. Royal watchers knew instantly. His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Harry and Meghan. And next to those initials, another line. Applicants petition for retroactive alignment of birth record and parental attribution for purposes of international recognition, succession legitimacy, and private family integration. Read that again. Retroactive alignment of birth record. That means changing a birth certificate after the adoption to make it appear as though the adoptive parents were biological. In some states, this is legally allowed in private adoptions. The new parents are listed as if they gave birth, effectively rewriting history. But in a royal context, that's dangerous territory. Because if the world was told Archie was born to Meghan, and official records were doctored to support that. Then what we have isn't just a secret. It's a fabrication, an illusion, a royal lie. But it gets deeper. Lady C claims the file also includes the birth mother's initials, KL. Not a name, not an address, just those letters. And a note that the mother agrees to permanent, closed adoption with no expectation of post-placement contact. No contact, no photos, no updates. A clean break. Now here's where things get sticky. Normally, adoption files like this are sealed. Forever. They don't get mailed to socialites across the Atlantic. So how did Lady C get it? That's the question no one can answer. Some speculate a former legal assistant leaked it. Others believe Meghan's own camp, fractured by infighting, burned bridges, and bitter exits, may have turned on her. But here's what's terrifying for Team Sussex. The document exists. And even if it's not published, its existence threatens the entire foundation of Meghan and Harry's public narrative. Because if Archie wasn't born to Meghan, but instead adopted via private legal arrangement, everything changes. The Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the Spotify specials, the lifestyle brand, the cookbook dedications, the entire motherhood identity Meghan has crafted. It all collapses. And the palace? They know. According to one royal insider, after Lady C's video aired, Buckingham Palace initiated a containment review. All archival records relating to Archie's birth were double-locked. Legal counsel was consulted. Old press briefings were reanalyzed to ensure consistency. One memo, allegedly leaked by a junior staffer, read, "We must anticipate the possibility that this file is genuine. Damage control strategy needed." Damage control, not denial. That alone speaks volumes. But what about Meghan? How did she react? Reports from her inner circle describe the moment she found out as devastating. She was in Montecito. In the kitchen, someone had just sent her the video link. She watched in silence. Then, as one friend described, she broke, just shattered. It was the one thing she thought she had locked down forever. According to that same source, Meghan made 2 immediate calls to her legal team, demanding cease and desist orders be drafted within the hour. To Harry, who was away at the time, crying, screaming, allegedly saying, "They know. It's out. Everything's out." And Harry? Sources say he was stunned. He hadn't expected this to get out. He thought the adoption had been buried under enough paperwork to stay hidden forever. But paper burns, and digital files leak. And Lady C? She isn't backing down. In her latest update, she said, "They can send all the lawyers they want, but I will not be intimidated. The public deserves to know what's been hidden from them." She claims she won't publish the full file yet, but she's begun releasing snippets, phrases, dates, pseudonyms, enough to keep the story alive. To push Meghan's team into panic. To signal, "I have it all." But she's not the only one. In the wake of her video, at least 3 other independent investigators claimed they've seen matching documents. One says he received a partial PDF months ago, thought it was fake, discarded it. Now he's reconsidering. Another alleges that a legal assistant from California reached out to him last year, hinting at an A-list adoption scandal involving a political family, only now connecting the dots. The file, it seems, is out there. Duplicated. Shared. Impossible to bury again. And what does that mean? It means Meghan Markle may have run out of time. Because when truth leaks, even through a single page, it spreads like wildfire. And no PR firm, no Duchess title, no billion-dollar deal can put that fire out. But there's one part of the file Lady C hasn't revealed yet. A signature. A witness. A name attached to the final approval form. And when that name comes out, it won't just confirm the adoption. It'll confirm the cover-up. What if the biggest twist in this entire saga wasn't inside the palace, but in a modest apartment tucked away in California? What if she, the one person no one was supposed to hear from, finally broke her silence? Because after years of whispers, sealed files, and non-disclosure agreements, the woman who believes she is Archie Harrison's biological mother has decided to speak. And her story? It's nothing like the version you've been told. This chapter begins not in Montecito or Windsor, but in Burbank, California. Quiet neighborhood, low-rise apartments, the kind of place no paparazzi would ever think to look. She introduces herself by a pseudonym, Kayla, mid-30s, mixed race, soft voice, nervous eyes. She doesn't want fame. She doesn't want money. She wants something else. Closure. Because for 6 years, she's been living with a secret that has weighed heavier every time she's seen Meghan Markle on screen, holding the boy she once carried inside her. It started, she says, with a phone call in the fall of 2018. She had just moved back to California after a rough breakup, financially vulnerable, emotionally raw, working part-time at a wellness center and considering her options after finding out she was pregnant. I was scared. I wasn't ready. But I also didn't want to go through an agency. I didn't trust the system. I started looking for private options. Through a referral from someone at a yoga retreat, she was introduced to a woman, allegedly representing a high-profile couple seeking to adopt. The names were never given. Only the profile, British, multiracial, very private, want to give a child a global upbringing. Kayla was intrigued. She agreed to an in-person meeting at a neutral location in Santa Monica. There, she met the representative again. This time, she was given a contract, written in vague legal language, promising support, medical coverage, and an extraordinary post-placement gift. Still no names. I asked, why all the secrecy? And they told me, it's because this child will be in the public eye. That scared me a bit. But I also felt like maybe it meant the baby would be loved, protected. In December 2018, a woman introduced as M visited her in person. And Kayla claims she knew right away. It was Meghan. I mean, I'd seen her on TV. I'd watched Suits. She looked different, less makeup, more guarded. But it was her. She was told not to refer to her as Meghan, just M, and the meeting was brief. Tense. She didn't ask a lot about me. Just wanted to know that I was healthy, clean, no addictions. She seemed clinical, not warm, not cold either, just businesslike. Kayla says they spoke only once more, on the phone. M said, "You're doing something beautiful. You'll never be forgotten." But Kayla was forgotten. Deliberately. Because months later, when Archie was introduced to the world as the biological son of Meghan and Harry, Kayla was stunned. I kept looking at the photos and thinking, that's my baby. Not just emotionally. Physically. His ears. His eyes. I knew. But the NDAs she signed were brutal. Lawyers called her when she emailed the agency that brokered the match. She was told that if she spoke out, she could face lawsuits. Ruin. I was scared. I didn't want trouble. But I felt erased. I gave them a piece of myself, and they acted like I didn't exist. She cried for weeks after seeing the Oprah interview. Not because Meghan cried, but because she didn't. I thought, if she loved him, really loved him, wouldn't she have mentioned the journey? Even a hint? But it was all about her. Her pain. Her narrative. Kayla wrestled with guilt. She didn't want to ruin a child's life. She didn't want to expose a secret that could hurt him. But then came Lady C's leak. The file. The initials. And the date. April 29, 2019. The exact day she signed her final release form. That's when I knew. It wasn't just in my head. It was real. They really adopted him. And they really covered it up. Kayla finally decided to talk. She sent a message to a small journalist-run blog known for publishing celebrity blind items. She left a voicemail. No name. Just, if you're looking into the Archie story, I'm the one they paid to forget. The blog didn't publish her full story, but the tip was enough. Within 48 hours, their inbox was flooded with traffic from VPNs tracing back to, you guessed it, Montecito. They had been found. But Kayla didn't back down. She recorded her story, voice only, masked, and sent it to a trusted confidant, who then sent it to Lady C's team. Lady C, in turn, confirmed that the details in Kayla's story matched the file she received. Dates, clinic names, payment schedules, it all fit. So the question becomes, why did Meghan go to such lengths? Why not tell the truth? Why not be open about adoption, a noble act, a loving choice? Kayla thinks she knows. Because the brand she built required her to be the victim, the pregnant duchess, the woman rising above palace cruelty while growing a baby inside her. That's the image. That's what sells. And Kayla? She was just the inconvenient truth. The ghost. But ghosts don't stay quiet forever. And now, her story is beginning to ripple. A podcast host has offered her a protected platform. A former palace staffer claims to remember seeing a file with her initials. The internet is ablaze with side-by-side photos. Users pointing out similarities between Kayla and Archie. Even body language experts are weighing in. Analyzing Meghan's gestures with Archie, the way she holds him, the lack of maternal instinct in some footage. It's circumstantial, but chilling. And the palace? Still silent. But sources say the Queen, before her passing, was aware of inconsistencies surrounding Archie's birth. And now, with Charles on the throne and William managing more royal duties, there are whispers that the truth may eventually be forced into daylight. But Kayla doesn't care about headlines. She just wants the world to know. I'm not here to tear anyone down. I just want him to know, someday, that he came from love. That his real story matters. That he wasn't a prop. That line, it hits like a hammer. Because if Kayla is telling the truth, and all signs suggest she is, then Archie Harrison was never the royal miracle the world was sold. He was a child caught between identity, ambition, and a lie too big to admit. And Meghan, the woman praised for her maternal glow, may have never carried him at all. But now that the mother has spoken, all eyes are turning toward the system that let this happen. And at the center of it, an agency with royal ties, a paper trail that leads to sealed vaults, and a powerful family scrambling to maintain control. Because next, we uncover the institution that helped make this secret possible.